What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and we're going to talk about true love today. And true love in the way of this bad boy right here. Now, this is my first 1911. I bought this in probably, I think, 2002 or 2003. And I bought it, and I've enjoyed this thing. And it is one of my favorite pistols of all time. One, because it's 1911, and I love the way 1911 shoot. But two, because it was the first one I was actually able to buy with my own money. Got a couple things added on here. One, that recover tactical grip, because this didn't have a rail on it, because I couldn't afford a railed model back then. And a magwell from Wilson Combat, which is absolutely awesome because it's very, very budget friendly. It goes right on underneath the grip with those screws. And it works pretty dang well if you weren't able to get one with a magwell on it from the factory. Now, when I say that chance at true love, because a lot of people that are new into the game of shooting, when I hand them a 1911 of a quality brand that shoots well, they usually have a very good experience with it, and they tend to kind of like the way it feels. Whether that's a 45, a 10, or a 9mm, a double stack, an STI, there are so many options out there based on this platform that you could really get lost, but you do have to stick with a known quality brand for sure. Otherwise, you could run into some of those issues. There are people out there that are absolute diehard 1911 people, and there are people that absolutely do not like the 1911 series because there is some magical stuff that we talk about when it comes to 1911s. Now, we all know most people making triggers chase the 1911 triggers. It is an absolutely amazing trigger system. Now, there is a difference between a couple different variations and how they work. You have a 70 series, you have an 80 series, and we'll get more into that here in just a minute. But the 1911 is one that has been chosen by the military, Special Ops Group, FBI, HRT, a lot of just competition shooters, law enforcement people, because it's just an absolutely great platform. There are positives and there are some negatives to a 1911 style platform. Some of those can be solved by the 2011, which is a double stack 9mm that gives you a little bit more Pez dispense to out there when you need to. So very cool setup still, regardless of what it is. Now, talk about the history and some couple quick things that everybody needs to know about the 1911. And for some of you, this may be common knowledge, but remember, knowledge is a gift, and we should be sharing that with people, especially people we want to bring into our community, or just give them a little bit of information so they can be more informed in case they're interested in something like this 1911. The 1911 was in service with the military from 1911 to 1986. Now, anybody that's been in the military, especially recently, a gun that was in service that long is pretty cool, but those things had to have had a train run on them. I would have hated to use a 1911 that had been in service for 20 or 30 years, especially after using the Berettas that had just been worked over for years by the time I was in, and pretty much became what was called the Italian Tomahawk. Basically what that means is when they stopped working, which they often did, you just turned it around and you threw it at somebody. But the 1911 was a service weapon for a very long time. Now, it is a little bit different than a lot of striker-fired polymer stuff out there, so forgive me if you know this, but I want everybody to understand the basics. So as we drop the mag, we'll clear this out. So this is a single action gun. What do I mean by single action? What that means is as you have a grip on this, the pull of the trigger only does one thing, and that one thing is it releases the hammer. Now, once that round goes down range, it's going to cycle and it's going to reset that hammer for you. So double action pistols basically is if you're pulling the trigger, it's activating the hammer, then dropping it. So that's doing two things at once. Single action means one action's coming out of that trigger. There are other slight differences, some striker fired stuff, some double action, single action, but that's kind of a gross generalization of what it is. Now, the 1911, once it's in battery, does have an exterior safety on it, being this lever right here. Now, this one being the first one I purchased, I didn't have a ton of money. I only got the single-sided safety because I couldn't afford an upgraded model. So, two external safeties on this. Basically, you have to depress this, otherwise you cannot pull the trigger, even if you have the backstrap safety engaged. So once this is down, you still cannot pull the trigger unless you have a good grip on the tang right there, so you can see your beaver tail right there has some movement in it. So once you have your good grip and that safety is disengaged, you can then send the hammer down, which sends the firing pin forward and expends that round, and it starts that cycle all over again, just like that. Definitely a very cool setup, was in service for a long time. Now there are some slight differences between a 70 and an 80 series. Basically, there was some truth to possibly, if being dropped muzzle down on the 70 series, that it could have enough inertia to send the firing pin forward and possibly let a round off. So the Series 80 stuff actually has a plunger style safety, much like many striker fired pistols today, and kind of a lever that flips up and disengages that as you're pulling the trigger, which is why you're going to see a little bit more take up on a Series 80s than you would on, say, this Series 70s. So look at this trigger. There is almost zero slack before it just goes and sends that round down range. Now a Series 80, you're going to have noticeably more take up, still going to be an amazing trigger, but that is because it is activating those safeties in there to ensure that that is 100% drop safe. Now in the 70 series stuff, a lot of companies have gone to a very, very lightweight striker in there or firing pin. That way that inertia is kind of let off and it's less likely to actually go bang when it's not supposed to. I've never seen that in person. I've seen a lot of these things hitting the ground, but it is a possibility in the 70 series setup. Like I said, I've never seen one, but it can happen. So the 80 series was meant to change that. And I can tell you, I carried a 1911, wasn't this one. It was my Kimber Tactical Entry 2, which I'm doing a video on as well for a very long time on duty, and it had zero issues. So my experience with the 1911 has been everything good. I've never had a bad experience with the 1911, unless it was a really cheap knockoff, kind of like a llama or something. But I've always had just an amazing time with the 1911 platform. And generally when I am helping out somebody who's new or has never shot before or is just getting into it, I will take a variety of setups out there, from M&Ps to Glocks. I used to have some other Smith & Wesson stuff, some compact stuff, and I always bring a couple of 1911s with me. And typically what I find is one, once they understand the basics of shooting, they shoot far better with this, and they generally like it more, even though it is a heavier and more difficult setup to work. Because if you sally risk these things or you don't know how to run a 1911, I promise it will run you. They need to be practiced with, they need to be taken care of, and they need to be oiled more so than Glocks or other polymer striker fired setups. Now, if you do all those things, you're going to have a great experience. If you don't clean your guns and you don't take care of them and you shoot really bad ammo, you might not have the best experience. Now, we're going to get deep into this. I'm going to kind of show you the teardown, the basic parts in here, so you have a relative idea of what's going on here. And like I said, I'm going to give you that chance at true love to see if this is something you like. Not that I met you out of range, got you dirty, and put you away with no lube on you, because this is something you need to take care of and clean. But I think once a lot of people actually get this and start using it, they really do enjoy it. And I do as well, but you're going to spend more money up front. So we're going to go ahead and get into this thing and check out what it's all about right now. It's magical, it's mythical, it won 2 world wars, and that's all we need to know, right? Just kidding. So the 1911, Springfield 1911A1, 70 series model, was the first one I bought. I love it. I know some people have issues with Springfield, but we're not going to dive into that. We're just talking about this setup that I own. A couple different things on here. Then it would come factory. Obviously, this did not come with a rail, so I added that Recover tactical rail on it. Wilson Combat Easy Magwell. Very simple. It just hooks over the screws underneath the grip. You tighten it down, you're good to go. As far as magazines go, these are the Wilson Combat Elite Tactical Mags. They are 8-rounders. Very good mags in combination with that Magwell, but your capacity is limited. Even if you get the big extendos, you still got like 10 or 11 rounds. So, but it's the 1911. It is a platform that people love. So, talking about those safeties, if your safety is engaged, it doesn't work. If one of 2 safeties is disengaged, it still won't work. You need to be able to run this, manipulate this safety off and on as it cycles, and you need to be able to work it. This one specifically is a single-sided safety. Most of my others are safety on both sides. This was just the first one, and it was the one that fit within my budget. So let's talk about breakdown here. Some are different than others. Some have bull barrels, some have different barrel bushings. This is a 2-piece guide rod that you do need an Allen to take apart.
Some people say that's a buzzkill. Doesn't really matter for me because I pretty much always have tools on me. But what you need to do is go ahead and take that apart just like that. And you need to depress right there on that bushing. Some people need a tool to do it. Some people can just do it with their thumbs. If you don't have tools, all you do is just press right there on the edge and you rotate that off to the side. Do that again. Rotate that off to the side and then put your fingers over it, because if you don't, that bushing is going to come flying out at you and maybe lose your eyeball. So once you get this to that point right there, you can slide that back over to the opposite side and it will pull straight off. It's a little lubed up right now, but comes off, and then you can see that retaining lug in it right there. Very simple stuff. Trust me, you're not going to have any issues taking this thing apart. Now from here, what you need to do is pull back and you will see two notches in that slide, one big one and one small one. You want to get that small one directly in line with your slide stop slide release, and the reason is you're just going to push from the other side on it and it's going to come right out and it's going to pop off and you are good to go there. So at this point, you're ready to just take it down to two pieces. So let's go ahead and tackle the frame first. We can see a couple different things going on here. One, you can see our safety better. Two, you can see the hammer, how it engages. And you can see that this is just one big block of milled steel, which is awesome. I love these heavy guns. They're just great. But pretty simple design for its time. And you got to remember, this was a revolutionary firearm for its time. Very, very cool. Very, very easy to work with here. And I think a lot of people just get intimidated for no reason when it comes to these setups. Solid stuff in here. We're not going to do a full breakdown of every single piece. That gets a little tedious. Plus, this is a basic intro to 1911s just to kind of cover this setup. Now let's talk about the slide here, because there are big differences in how this is. We'll pull out the other half of that recoil guide rod spring assembly. You can see right there, two-piece design, screws into itself in there. And your barrel pulls out this way. It's not like a striker fired setup where you drop the barrel out like that. So very, very cool. You have that retaining lug right there in the barrel. This thing has got a ton of rounds through it. You can see the wear on that barrel. And there are several different designs. Some have bull barrels that, you know, at the end where it flares out and basically stops that slide from going too far back out when it's coming into battery. Multiple different designs of the 1911 platform. Well, let's talk about the 70 series frame and slide. So in the 70 series, you will notice that there is no kind of like plunger safety, like you see a striker safety, like you see in a lot of the, or pretty much all of the polymer-based striker fired stuff. The 70 series didn't have those. So in a 70 series, you're going to have a secondary engagement lever right here that as you pull the trigger, it's going to raise up and depress a striker safety that's up in the slide. That's the 80 series. Now in a 70 series, you don't have any of that, and there has been over the years that possibly this wasn't drop safe, if dropped straight down because the weight of the firing pin could hit the round and set it off. So to alleviate that, the 80 series was born. That's what I carried on duty in my Kimber Tactical Entry 2 for years. Never had an issue with it. I've never had an issue with this, but that is a technical possibility, which even some manufacturers will tell you in the 70 series setups. All right, so let's talk reassembly now. Pretty much the exact opposite of how we took this thing apart. Barrel and recoil guide rod assembly right there. Slide that barrel in, make sure your retaining lug is down. And you will see here there is a U section on the guide rod. That part right there is what's touching the barrel. So you're just going to grab it, slide it right through, nice and easy. Drop it down, make sure it's in the appropriate place. And at this point, you can put your slide right back on the frame. I always do it upside down just because it makes life a little easier for me. Now what we're going to look for here is to line up that little lug and hole right in there of the barrel with the hole in the frame. And the reason we're doing that is because this is what retains that, your slide stop slide release. So we're going to go ahead and push this through. It's captured and you can push back to right there, that same notch again. Now because I have this recovered tactical grip, normally you can just push this straight kind of up and it'll catch that little retaining pin right there and you just push it in. Because this grip protrudes so far like that, you've got to use a tool, which is still very easy. Just get it right there, grab the firearm like such, grab a Glock tool or a punch or anything. You're just going to depress that while you slide that up in and through. And as you can see, locks right into place as it should. Go ahead, ride the slide forward, put the safety on so the slide doesn't move, and we'll tackle the front here. Very, very simple. Grab your barrel bushing right here, slide it back on, and rotate it over. So rotate it over so these ends are to the shooter's right-hand side. That way it's locked in place. Grab your bushing right there, and you're just going to push it and depress it down. You can do this with your hands, pretty easy. Get it caught on that lip right there, and just push it with your finger or tool if you need it, and rotate that bad boy all the way over so it's in place. Grab the threaded section of your recoil guide rod assembly, push it in, and you're going to tighten this thing down to factory spec, which I forget right now, but basically hand tight, and you're going to be good to go. There's no thread lock or anything on that. Just nice and firm on there. And we're going to do a function check. One, make sure it cycles, make sure the safety activates freely, pull the trigger, drop the safety, pull the trigger again. It should not go bang. Go ahead and hold that back strap and that mainspring housing so it's engaged. Pull the trigger, it should function. Cycle it, extend that trigger, you should hear the reset, and you are going to be good to go at that point. And then I always make sure that the magazines come in and out, and that it does lock back, and that the slide, release, and stop works. So at that point, you're good to go. You've done your functions check. You know the basics of tearing down a 1911, which is one of America's most loved firearms.
It's mythical, it's magical, it's the 1911. So, like I said, everybody, some people love this system and some people absolutely despise it. From my experience, once people know how to work this thing, know how to run it, and know how to do basic grip and shooting, they really have a good experience with the 1911. And I really think it's a system that everybody should own. Now, let's address a little bit of Springfield Armory, because this is a Springfield Armory, and I know the comments have probably already posted. Springfield Armory made a little bit of a mistake. Well, not a little bit, pretty big mistake with some legislation, some 2A stuff that was not very friendly, kind of carved out a little section for themselves. But I've had this thing since I was a kid, like 2002, 2003. It's my first 1911. I am never getting rid of it. It is a nice 1911, even though it was more of the budget sector. But how long does it take us for, to forgive a company for making some bad decisions or maybe a bit of an indiscretion? I don't know, that's up to you. All I know is this is like a part of me. I've had this forever, and I would hate to have to ever get rid of it. So that being said, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about with Springfield and some of their issues. In all, the 1911, as long as it's a quality brand, is an absolute joy to shoot. But are there positives and negatives to it? Yes, there absolutely are. So let's talk about some of those positives. One, the ergonomics of this thing, especially for me, absolutely amazing. The line of sight, the line of angle fits my wrists, my hands absolutely perfectly. I really do enjoy just about every 1911 that's a quality brand. I enjoy shooting it, I enjoy holding it. It is a heavier gun, but I kind of like that weight, and it does help with that recoil control. Other positives, there's a lot of options out there for 1911 these days. The 1911, the 2011, that's different. Your caliber options, your price variation options. This was a more budget-friendly one, and you can get up into the $5,000–$6,000 mark very quickly for a 1911 or a 2011. So there's definitely good and bad. And the best thing about the 1911, like I said, is definitely that trigger. There's just nothing else like it. That's just kind of the way these things are made. And that's why people chase it. So are there negatives? Yes, there are. This thing is heavy. So if you convert to this for a belt-ridden setup, you are going to notice the difference between this and a Glock. It is a heavier setup. It is a more expensive setup. Even the more budget-friendly ones that are of a quality brand are gonna run you generally around that $650 to $1,200, $1,300, $1,500, and they can just go up from there. But you can generally find kind of a base model 1911 for around that $650, $750 with some sales sometimes. So that's good, but definitely more expensive than other stuff. They do require more maintenance. You've got to treat these guns with a little bit more love as compared to others. And you should be taking care of all your systems out there, but this one definitely needs a little bit of extra attention and joy out there. Now, manipulations of it, ease of use. Like I said prior, you need to know this system. If you do not run this right or know how to run it or practice with it, or you limp wrist this thing, it is going to run you. You will have malfunctions, you will have issues. So that is something where if you're going to convert to a 1911 platform and you're not a 1911 shooter, you need to do a lot of time practicing between proper grip, engagement, disengagement of that safety, and magazine exchanges being one of the biggest negatives about the 1911 platform. It's got a low capacity. So these are my Wilson Combat 8 rounders. You can get 10 rounders for it, but single stack 1911s, that's not a huge capacity, especially when you're talking about 45. You're gonna get 8 to 10 rounds. Factories are 7. That's a buzzkill because one, you're doing more exchanges out there, which is great for training. Not so great if you are in a shooting scenario, but it shoots like a dream. So does it make up for it? I don't know. That's for you to decide. Now the new 2011s do kind of make up for that because you can get a ridiculous capacity from 17 to like 22 rounds in them. 9mm, but still the new 9mm ammo is absolutely awesome. So it's really up to you guys on what you're interested in, what you have the budget for, but a 1911 is something that I just tell everybody you should have one in your collection because they are a joy to shoot. They're a great system, and you can always unload it if you need to as long as you've taken care of it. It is definitely just one of my favorite setups. It's one of my first actual purchases when I came of age and I could actually buy a pistol in the state of Arizona. In all, one of my favorite setups here. One, because it was my first, so we always remember our first, right? And this was it, and I'm going to keep it forever. I do have some more videos coming out on a Kimber Tactical Entry 2 and a couple of other 1911 setups as well. And I've definitely got some 2011 STI content coming. So you guys go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you like seeing this stuff and learning about it, and like the video if you thought it was good. Make sure all of you hit that bell notification icon so you get notified when the videos come out. And if you've been here for a while, I appreciate you guys. If you want to support the channel, you can use any of the links down below for anything you saw here. Maybe you like that recover, maybe you like that magwell from Wilson. I've done videos on those. You can check those out on the channel. Those links do help it out because they're affiliate links. If you want to be ultra generous to the channel, I have that subscribe star going now so we can continue to grow the channel together. And I appreciate all your support on everything, and I will see you guys real soon with another 1911. Get out there on the range and enjoy one of your favorite setups. Leave me a comment down below if you are interested in the 1911 thing because definitely something that I'm going to keep doing.